Hello, I'm Mehrnaz Campbell, founder and CEO of Kimia and Kimia Reset. And thank you so much for joining us for this LinkedIn Live today. Today I've got a little surprise for you. You may have seen my post, but I just want to tell you yesterday was Iranian New Year. And Iranian New Year is a bit different to the normal New Year because it's not at the midnight, or we celebrate New Year when like the earth does a full circle around the sun. So sometimes it's odd times in the day. So this year was 3 o'clock in the morning. And to bring in the new year, we have this ceremonial table where we have 7 things that starts with the alphabet se in our language and few other things. So there's a picture of the items we've got in our half sin. And I just wanted to kind of explain to you what they are. We germinate seeds to have like this small kind of like display of germinated wheat that is symbol of rebirth. Apple is a symbol of beauty. We have sumac, that's a symbol of spice of life. We have coins, which represent prosperity. We have garlic, which is symbol of medicine and good health. We have vinegar, which symbolizes patience. We use samanu, which is symbol of strength. We have flowers, spring flowers that symbol of bringing in the spring. So, and those were the items that start with a letter se in our language. But we also have mirror that represents light. We've got goldfish that represent life, and we have senjet, which is fruit of the lotus flower, which is a symbol of love. And similar to Easter, we have painted eggs, which is the symbol of fertility. I just thought you might be curious to know about that because I'm really excited. And you can see I've got a display of my ceremonial table and the flowers behind me. So Happy New Year to all of you. As you know, if you tuned in before, I'm really passionate about helping pharma field professionals feel confident about using technology to improve the engagement with healthcare professionals. And I really want everybody who works in the field to feel good about themselves and feel they can achieve amazing results. And it's the human element of digital transformation, enabling people to use technology confidently to engage with healthcare professionals and deliver value is what I'm really curious about. And to explore this topic, I've been inviting and interviewing inspiring pharma leaders to learn from them and give them a platform so they can share their perspective. So I'm really delighted to welcome Amish Patel here. Hi, Amish.
Hey, Mehrnaz, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And hello, everybody.
It's really great to have you here. And apparently, according to LinkedIn, Stephen Bartlett's going to join and tune in to listen to this interview, right? Is that happening?
Correct. You might be lurking there somewhere in the background. So, yeah, if you're there, Stephen, hello. Good to see you again.
Yeah, Stephen, please write in the chat so we can say hello to you and as they say, like let the real Stephen Bartlett stand up, right? So you met him this Monday. Tell me about it.
I did. Yeah. So, I went to his business and life speaking tour. Managed to get a couple of minutes of some one-to-one time with him as well. So it was really great to kind of just chat to him, see what he's focusing on right now, which is AI podcasting. So some detail behind what he's doing there, which is really interesting, and see how that can maybe transfer that into types of work that I'm doing.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we have a hello here from Ben. Hi, Ben. Thank you. It's Happy New Year to you. It's good to see you. We met on Friday at PM Awards, but we never really had the chance to talk. It was so noisy and we weren't sitting next to each other. So it's really good that you've joined us today. So let me tell you a little bit about Amish and how I met him. Amish is a marketing consultant who his mission is to simplify pharma marketing in today's noisy world of shiny things. He's a founder of APC, a marketing consultancy that helps pharma companies create and execute effective engagement strategies while they're building their in-house capabilities. He's works on tactical marketing and turning strategy to executive marketing campaigns. And some of the examples his work is physically helping people with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, or on the capability side, coaching to build capability of marketing teams. So let me tell you a story of how we met. I remember the first time I saw you, Amish, was actually on LinkedIn. It was around quarter 4 2022. And you were doing this Christmas jingle campaign as part of the PM Society digital interest group. There were like 12 videos, but I remember your video, your jingle, really kind of like stood out for me. And I thought, I really want to meet Amish. And then I joined the PM Society Digital Interest Group in the March of 2023. And that's where I kind of met you online in the meeting. And I don't know exactly when, but throughout like our social media interactions, I noticed that we both know the same people. We know Gurav, we know Chris Wade, and also Dan Buckland. And it was when we went to Dubrovnik, the next Pharma event in May last year, that was when we kind of like all organically gravitated towards each other and formed the next Pharma Legend group. And since then, we've been pretty inseparable, right?
We have, yes. I love that. Yeah, when we first officially met in Dubrovnik, yeah, it was really interesting. It was I was at breakfast essentially, yeah, and it was really great. And as you said, it was yeah, our content, our alignment beforehand. It was just kind of like we're interacting with each other, and then to see each other kind of face to face and get talking, and then continue that relationship. It's been amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been really cool. And we did the podcast together, the four of us. That was quite
Mhm.
cool. And Dan, I think, gave us superhero costumes, which was hilarious.
It was, yeah. It was interesting actually referring back to the original video you saw of mine of the Christmas jumpers with the words around omnichannel. I think my word was something around the customer being the hero of the story as well. So it all
Oh,
kind of
cool.
connects. So yeah.
I don't think many people get that. So you need to play that video again because I really loved it. So I'm just really curious to know what drew you to pharmaceutical industry. What made you join?
Yeah. To be honest, there's no like what's the word, like motivational story behind this. I kind of fell into the industry, um, and I fell into the industry into quite a unique role, which I don't think exists really today. So I needed a job. I was kind of working in sales in other industries, and I fell into a contract role where I was not even selling. I was booking appointments for remote reps at
Hmm.
the time. So this was back in 2011. Remote reps weren't mainstream, I guess, at that point. So I was the person booking appointments, so speaking to the gatekeepers, speaking to GPs, to then schedule an appointment for someone else to then do a sales call. So that's kind of like how I started out, and then contract role after contract role um, kind of led to me then having a role within GSK. Almost it didn't happen as well because I think after that initial contract role, I actually left the industry for a bit, came back, did another contract role, sales role with GSK, and then I guess there was a bit of a sliding doors moment there where there was a role that I was going for within a sales role, and actually I didn't get it. And then I almost went into a different industry on a grad scheme elsewhere, which would have been very boring, and I'm glad that didn't happen. But basically, another role opened up within GSK, and I managed to then grab that very last minute. And then kind of continued my career pretty much on from there, from sales roles through to brand management and digital teams, and then kind of local and global roles as well. So yeah, there was that pivotal moment where yeah, it could have all turned out very differently, but I ended up kind of staying in the industry and then still being there now.
What a journey. So you started as a contractor in 2011, which is what, 13 years ago, and you weren't even like in the sales team to go into sales, go to marketing, lead global teams in marketing, and then go and set up your own company. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. Yeah, no, when you put it like that, it does seem pretty wild. Yeah.
Do you know, I think there's so many people who work in the field or just entered the industry or even thinking about their career in the industry. They would be really impressed to be where you're sitting right now. So maybe you should write a book about that, how you got there. That's a great journey.
Oh, I don't know. I think writing a book, I mean, obviously, you know, because you've done it. I don't think I'm not in a place to write a book just yet, but yeah, one day we'll see.
Yeah. So, Amish, I'm really curious about your marketing and consultancy, APC. What inspired you to go out on your own? Because it's quite a brave decision to go and start your own, especially that you kind of like, as I'm saying, if you look at your journey from entering into industry to where you are now, that's 13 years. So tell me about what led you to, step out of your comfort zone and start this consultancy.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's probably a reason which was kind of probably building over time, and I think if I pinpoint it to anything, I think I very quickly realized as I was doing different roles from sales through to brand management, and then I was getting really interested in the digital marketing side of things. And I was kind of going down a bit of a specialist route there, and then finding myself in central digital teams, accelerator teams, that type of thing, working then on kind of adjacent to brand teams. And then I really found myself in a bit of an environment, let's say, where to progress, I was kind of hitting a ceiling as a specialist. So I thought, in terms of my progression, um, I really wanted to double down on my strengths, which was around marketing, trying new things, experimenting, applying digital, which was, I guess, newish back then, to what brands were trying to do with their roles. And so I basically found myself thinking, like, if I want to progress, I need to go do something else. I need to figure out a different way to do this.
Hmm.
And then I guess what gave me the confidence to actually then go out on my own was that I was outside of the industry on the side. I was doing things where I was activating social media campaigns or creating content for what started out as my personal trainer at the time, which then became his studio and then became his clients, which are self-employed. And all of this. So I was kind of having fun with kind of dabbling with kind of really getting hands on activating campaigns for other industries, other small businesses. And so it kind of gave me that confidence to say, hey, look, I can do this. There's work out there. And then the real pivotal point was the pandemic, essentially, which is
Hmm.
when it all actually happened. So it's during the first wave of COVID. I think it was around September 2020 was when I officially left the industry and my last role, and then set up literally from September 30th or whatever to October the 1st. I was now going solo, and that's kind of like where it all began, really.
That's really brave because, to do that during pandemic, that's phenomenal. I'll take my hat off to you. That's, fantastic. But also we've got a question here that probably nicely ties to what we're talking about. Thank you, James, for popping this question. James is asking, are companies deferring too much to agencies for marketing strategy and tactical delivering? I see this more and more along with the de-skilling of in-house marketing expertise compared to when James joined the industry. I don't think that was a very long time ago because I was probably there joining with you, James. So what do you think, Amish?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually, and I think I have come across this, to be fair, whilst I was in house still, and also now, definitely with the clients I work with. I wouldn't want to say too, yeah, maybe too much is the right phrase, you know. I think there is a reliance on actually agencies doing a lot and actually not having official business owners internally, and that's why one of the core things of what I try to do is, whilst I'm helping people do something, I want to build that capability at the same time, which is why eventually they are learning something as they're going, so that they are then able to do things themselves, whether that's from creating strategy, whether that's turning that strategy into action, whether that's best practice around channels. I want them to apply those skills and really embed that, because I agree actually with that sentiment as well. I think for the industry to thrive going forwards, for people to really continue showing best practice in terms of customer engagement, that talent needs to remain in house, and actually agencies should be used to add extra kind of expertise, whether that's production or creative or something, but they shouldn't be driving the strategy and then basically doing kind of all of the work for us,
Mhm.
essentially.
So why is it that in-house pharma marketeers are becoming more of a project manager? They're bringing someone else to do the strategy and then bring the creative agency to the work. Has it always been like that? I guess it hasn't. So what do you think is a trigger point?
Now, do you know what? I think there's a lot to do these days, and I don't blame anyone here. I think people are being asked to do too much, and they are also
Hmm.
taking on too much themselves. And a lot of the time, I feel it as well when I was in house. Like, you're kind of spending all day in meetings. You've got a long to-do list of actions, and so by the time you can actually get to that to-do list of actions, actually it's the end of the day, you're tired, etc. And so I think the role of prioritization is well talked about, and ruthlessly dropping things for taking new things on, but actually in practice is very difficult to do. And so I think that just kind of leads on to, okay, let's just outsource this and outsource that.
Hmm.
And then really the core of the time is being spent in meetings. So I think there's definitely efficiencies to be had, but I think that's where it's all kind of come from.
Yeah, that's a really good valid point. We were actually, I guess you know, Amish, I work for PM Society Learning and Development subgroup, and we were talking about what are the key learning development for in-house marketeers, and some of the feedback we had from the survey is there's not a lot of investment in capability development of in-house marketeers. So that, coupled with high expectation of turning things around, means you need to seek sources of support from outside to be able to deliver on projects. So we've got a few more questions. I hope that answered your question, James. Thank you for popping your question. We've got a question from Ben, and he's asking, what industries outside pharma should we look for inspiration and innovation in the face of regulations and legal challenges? What's your thought, Amish?
Interesting. Also, hi Ben. We actually Ben and I actually worked together back in the day as
Did
well.
you?
Yeah,
What,
I
in
didn't know you guys knew
GSK?
each other. Yes, yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So what industries outside of pharma should we look to for inspiration and innovation in the face of regulation and legal? To be fair, I think many industries have regulations and legal constraints as well. So, I mean, the obvious ones are finance, but actually, I don't think we need to look at specific industries anymore. Um, I personally, I take a lot. I just kind of open myself to different companies, different brands from all different industries, and really just study them to see what they're doing well. Because I think there's a lot we can take from pretty much any brand, any company, in any industry, and really just apply that to what we're doing. And I think that's potentially where the benefit of kind of outside agencies come in as well, to kind of tie into the earlier question, because you need that headspace, first of all, to go away and do that studying of things. When I see things, I love to kind of just Google things, study things, talk to someone or whatever, figure out what they're doing. But then you need to be able to figure that out and translate that into, okay, how can we do this in pharma? And then work with the right people to kind of start from that visionary point to be like, okay, now working within our regulations and our kind of constraints or whatever, how can we apply something similar to our goal as well? So not trying to do everything, but seeing how we can apply that to something we're already trying to achieve. So yeah, I wouldn't look to any one industry. For me, it's always about studying what's
Mm.
working well across industries. So
I think
hopefully that helps.
one of the industries I think is quite similar is a banking, because 15, 20 years ago, if I want to do banking, I would go to a branch, but none of us go to the branch. But when you think about it, the banking not only invested in creating infrastructure for online banking, but they also had staff in the branches training the laggards and coaching people to get familiar with using. So it was a period that when people, like older people, were not comfortable using the apps or do online banking, they would go to the branch. But in the branch, there would be somebody coaching them to use the online platform in the branch. So they educated people and help humans to embrace the digital technology by providing support. And I think what we didn't do in pharma was just throw the digital tools and channels to the field teams in particular and expecting them to just jump and run with it. And it was something that was not in their comfort zone. And I think that's, as you know, is an area that I'm really passionate about. We didn't do change management to bring people on board, but banking did. And they invested in bringing consumers on that journey as well as their own staff on that journey. So I kind of like see a little bit of parallel there. Gosh, we've got so many good questions here. You're very popular. I know Stephen Bartlett didn't turn up, but he still can. But let me kind of like come back to some of those questions because I think it might relate to the a later conversation. Um, so the other question I have for you is, you talk about you being an expert in simplifying marketing. So how do you get teams to avoid the shiny things and focusing on what's important? I know there's a question there from James around AI, but what do you think is important and what do you think is shiny, and how do you support them to get their head around that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big thing. I think it's and I think, to be honest, first of all, as well, I'll say I'm not a big fan of the word expert, but thank you for calling me one. I think shiny things, do play a big part, and we shouldn't. I don't think we should avoid them. I think they have their place because they give us that kind of future possibility of what could come down the line, which can help us. But for me, I think it's all about being realistic in kind of the here and now, really. And that's kind of where the jump off that I take around how I try to simplify that and kind of steer people away from putting too much investment and focus into the shiny things, where really there's some foundational level things that maybe could be optimized first, which then pave the way for the shiny thing to then escalate that even or scale that even further, for example. So I basically channel, like I mentioned, all the different roles I'd been in, and I think, say, from sales team, brand team, or digital kind of solutions team, global or local. And I think about who are my customers in each of those roles. So even now, as a consultant or a coach, I work with people in those different types of teams that I've previously been in. And so with them, I think about, okay, who are the customers? So in your sales team or your brand teams, your customers are mainly external people,
Hmm.
mainly your healthcare professionals or potentially patients. But actually, if you're in one of those digital service teams, or whether you're in a global team, your customers are fundamentally your internal people, whether that's a local country or whether that's another adjacent team next to you, if you're global, for example. So you've got to think about, okay, first of all, who are your customers, and then really clarify you as what you're trying to do, what you're trying to implement or roll out. What is the objective, and then what is that clear measure of success, which really aligns to that. Um, and then the other thing I think is knowing who are all those stakeholders, especially if you're, let's say, if you're in a global role or a digital service solution team and your customers are internal, who are all those stakeholders and how can you get them involved as early as possible so that you can really then really get super practical to build that step-by-step approach, and really put yourself into the shoes of like all the different people that are involved. How are all of their priorities, all their things working on? How does that affect what you're trying to do?
Hmm.
And so really it's just having that mindset of channeling all the different customers you have and being in their shoes completely, and then taking it step by step, but still having that eye for the vision of kind of what is that big thing in the future that's coming down the line, and how can what we're doing now kind of pave the way for that. But really what's
Hmm.
important now, what's going to move the needle right now today that I can do and control.
I can see marketing teams naturally would have HCPs as a customer and spend time profiling them and understanding them and trying to communicate based on their preferences. Do you think marketing team also see field teams and internal stakeholders as a customer and just spend as much time understanding their preferences and nuances, or do you think that's kind of like get forgotten?
Yeah, I think it varies, to be honest, and I'd say no one's doing it perfectly. I think that definitely that should be the case. The sales force are a massive, important lever in the business, and actually without they play an important role in that kind of overall funnel of kind of adoption of what you're trying to achieve with your brand. And actually, the biggest successes I've seen is where the marketing team head office are taking that customer, that field force on the journey with them. And that's
Hmm.
not only from supporting them with technology or whatever, it's actually the how are you communicating with them, right? How are you taking them on the journey from simple. I saw a great example actually very recently with a client where it was a massive campaign which involved the sales force, and they played a critical role. And the head office team pretty much just laid out exactly the role that the sales force play, what actions they need to take. This is what we're doing as head office as well. So just around what you're doing, and basically taking them on that entire journey, and then also sharing the results with them as well, and vice
Hmm.
versa. So I think there are best cases of that happening, and there's definitely successes there. But it actually happening in practice obviously varies depending on the individual people, which is why I think, I mean, you talk about it as well in your book. It's transformation and change and omni-channel. It's all about people. There's lots of technology out there. There's lots of platforms, but it's all about people and how you're communicating and working together.
Yeah, which we have a fantastic question here to bring into the chat. It said after COVID-19, remote communications decreasing as evident by a Viva report. And the question is there any suggestions to build sustainable remote communication with HCPs?
I'm just thinking about that. Remote communication decreasing as stated. Yeah.
I think, while you're thinking about it, I think the communication is decreasing in some of the affiliates because the field team are reverting back to what they're comfortable with. They go to the channel they're comfortable with because face to face was their preferred channel. None of them wanted to work in the office. That's why they stayed in the field. And I think, in absence of having proper change management to help them get their arms around using remote channels for engagement, they just go back to what they're comfortable. And I talk about it in the book. It's like giving somebody a Formula One car when they're comfortable driving a normal car. If they're not confident, the car is going to stay on the tarmac. So some of those reasons about lower use of it is because individuals are moving away from it. But when you upskill the individuals, the engagement rate actually increases. And I've got, if you look at the book, the Omni Advantage, I talk about evidence when you empower the field team, give them the tools, they can actually increase that. So maybe answer that question for you, Amish, but please come in and add your perspective to it.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's all about, I guess, sustainable remote communication is quite subjective in a way as to what do we mean by sustainable there. I think the biggest thing for me is always around the data, to be honest, and this will vary in terms of the customers. Um, I'm all about kind of anything I really do with teams around customer engagement planning, on building kind of those executional plans, comes back to what is the insight we have about the customer, for that specific target audience as well, not generally. Um, and how do they want to communicate with us? Actually, because some customers, HCPs, do want to be face to face, and that's great.
Mhm.
So that will cater for what people want to do before. Some do want that hybrid approach, and so it's about basically using that data and bubbling that up and sharing really the why. And I guess remote communication happens in multiple ways as well, right? If we're talking about that live kind of rep to HCP communication, then yeah, phone call, video call. But also for me, when I say remote communication, I also bring in other digital channels as well. It's about all those different touch points you can do to really just build on the story over time, to just embed something or follow up on something as well. And so yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's what I've taken away. Feel free to kind of add to that question if you want. So yeah,
Yeah,
remote
love that.
communication for me is all channels.
And I think HCPs are already omni-channel, whether we want to accept it or not. And even the field force themselves, like they say, "Oh, I don't like remote channels," but they said, "What do you do in the evening? I'll watch Netflix." Where do you go shopping? I order stuff on Amazon, they order Uber. So I think it's like they associate using digital channels in their personal life, but they don't feel comfortable because maybe there needs to be some coaching and change management around that. But I was going to ask you, one of the reasons I find, because as you know, I have direct interaction with customers, HCPs, and my team do. And we find one of the main reasons that it could actually inhibit digital engagement or remote engagement is the content that is being communicated is not relevant to HCPs. When you're standing in someone's office and talking to them, if the content is not relevant and they don't like it, it might take them about 5 or 10 minutes to get rid of you. But online, 7 seconds, you've lost it. And I think if the content is not relevant, that's a key issue marketing can address. And I was going to ask you, when you coach marketing teams, how do you help them to make their HCP content inspiring and relevant?
Yeah, it's a big. This is a big thing, I think, in the industry. I think yeah, like you mentioned with the content there as well. I think the stats out there in terms of like some content gets created, doesn't even see the light of day. To be honest,
Hmm.
doesn't get the reuse stats, for example. Some of that content doesn't even get seen, and the one that does, as you mentioned, isn't inspiring the majority of time. Um, and one of the reasons I kind of put it down to, first of all, again, kind of trying to come back to almost the root cause of that. I've felt it, I've seen it, where actually creating content it's a bit of a chore. I think in roles, whether you're a brand manager or content manager, whatever your role job title is, it's a bit of a chore. I think it's just another thing on a long to-do list of stuff, and with it sometimes comes pain with copy approval and all of these kind of back and forth type of things. But when I create content, as I do now, I guess in without the constraints of approvals and all of that, I enjoy it. I have fun with it, and that carries through into the output, I think, and vice versa into the other kind of example I mentioned, where it's a chore. It kind of carries through into the output as well, as to this is just almost ticking a box. It's not really moving the needle either way. It's not really making people feel anything. And I think that's how you make content inspiring, right? It's got to make people feel something. hopefully positive something.
Mhm.
And that's the best thing. I think staying in the middle almost doesn't drive any change. It kind of just blends into everything else. So that's the kind of, I guess, the root cause of it. When I'm working with teams to create content, and similar to what I do, I've tried to be clear on each bit of content, like what is the purpose of it? And that purpose relates to, okay, what is that customer need? What is the pain point? What can I do to really help that person who's going to consume that content do in that day? Am I going to just add to their noise and frustrations because they're going to be subjected to thousands of things all day? Or am I really going to like enhance them, help them do something, delight them, entertain them, make them smile, make them feel
Mhm.
something, and that type of thing. And I think around really doing that, I think you've got to be a bit, the language needs to be human. I think we've talked about this before as well. And I know you talk about this a lot. I think let's keep the language quite human. Let's not just keep talking about like the same old stuff with these key messages, which everybody has, which I know they're important, but maybe not to lead with, and really show the customer really like what you can do. I think what is the impact that they create. If you really want to make them feel something, inspire them, show them the impact of really what they're doing daily, how that affects the lives of their patients, for example, and
Mhm.
not just in the obvious ways, but actually day to day, these little things. So we have a lot of patient case studies, for example, but how realistic actually are they? Sometimes I've seen things that are a bit too like visionary, or like with stock photos of, I don't know, some fancy holiday, which actually the average person doesn't take, for example, right? So how can we make it realistic, relevant, and really make them feel something? And then the final
Yeah.
thing is you mentioned with the time as well. Like, I don't know if 7 seconds might be quite generous these days, to be honest. Yeah, how can you make it concise and really bring them on a journey instead of trying to tell, I don't know, a 4 hour story in like one go, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I think what I find is marketing that is focused on broadcasting features of benefit of a brand doesn't land, because it doesn't create any emotion, because it's like saying, "Oh, look at me, my brand is great. We've got all these charts to show how good we are." But marketing that talks about what's the pain point that HCPs are experiencing, what is their challenges, what can gain as a result of that, and then like look at the Venn diagram of your like features and benefits and their pain point, and just target that sweet spot that your brand's features and value proposition directly addresses their pain point. That engages HCPs so fast, and when you get that right, what we find is the engagement volume increases, and they really see you as a trusted advisor and they want to work with you. And the other thing I want to add is, from a field perspective, if you engage the field team in creation of content from the outset and include their feedback in the process, they put skin in it, so they're going to be much more engaged and connected to that content and more likely to use it.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, I was just thinking back to, I know we haven't really talked about this fully before, but like sometimes when I'm working with teams and kind of if I'm running like a workshop, for example, or whatever, sometimes split it out, where actually like even the first half day or day or whatever, or first session, if it's online over a series, it's all about the customer. We don't even touch the content really. It's like
Mhm.
just identifying what are those customer pain points and using various ways to get to that point, really putting ourselves into the shoes like of the day, of the customer, the month, the week, whatever. And then
Mhm.
actually the next session, once you've had time to reflect on that, is then, okay, what is the messaging that we can do? Great. Okay, let's tie that to each of those things that we've just developed. And then think about formats. Okay, what are all the different formats that we can do? And then channels, right? So really it's just breaking it down into those pieces and really tying it back to that need, the information, instead of going straight to, okay, we're going to do an email about this or going to create a
Yeah.
video about this. And yeah. So yeah, just from a practical point of view, that's kind of some of the things I do. Yeah.
Yeah, you saw me. I was talking about it in Dubrovnik. Channel should come last. You need to be relevant. You need to be timely. And the other thing I find is we work with some great clients that they're able to turn content around really fast. Just to give you an example, this morning we were looking for this report. One of the team found the report. We shared it with the clients, and we asked for an approved email to be able to communicate that content. And I said to them, "When can we have it?" He says, "I'll try to turn it around by the end of today or tomorrow." That is speed. So the field force feel really empowered, saying, "That's brilliant. This is current knowledge. This is current information. I can go and talk about it either tomorrow or Monday." And can you imagine the level of energy you've got behind that? You saw something, you asked for it, is an opportunity, and you can go and talk about it 48 hours later. I remember I worked for some companies that the content would sit and get stuck in job bags for 6 months. So we need to be a lot more agile and nimble to kind of move things to be relevant and timely.
Yeah,
Um,
I just very quickly on that point as well, and that alludes to the other what we touched on earlier about like being concise. Actually, sometimes the more concise it is, the easier it might be to get out the door and approved as well.
mm,
The stuff that takes ages is just because it's probably just too long, to be honest. If it's too long for your reviewers to review it, actually think about your customers who are then going to try and consume it later on down the line as well. So yeah.
yeah. Imagine if I was going to tell everybody Happy New Year in Pharma and I had to go through compliance by the time like the approved content would come out. It's probably be like end of May, right?
Oh god, I remember I tried to do a Christmas email once. I don't think it's allowed in the code or something, but yeah, well, let's not go there.
Okay. So I've got a question around AI, and I want to bring input from a couple of people in the chat who asked questions. My question was around how do you think AI will drive the industry forward? And you've had a conversation with Steve Bartlett, so you can probably bring that in. But I've got two comments here. One from Manish Chauhan. So um, he obviously loves you. He said, "Hey, Hamish."
Yeah, he's
That's great.
another former colleague, also worked with Ben. I think he worked longer with Ben as well,
Where
but
did
yeah,
you
we
work
also
with Manish?
at GSK as well. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
hi
So
Manish.
his question is, have you come across any examples where AI is being considered, and what do you think will be the biggest challenges for pharma companies? And we've got another question from, I think, James, similar to that, saying, how best do you think industry can apply the best of AI? So the two are related, so you can maybe answer both of them at the same time. Or plus my question, three.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, AI is definitely here. I mean, I don't need to state the obvious here for sure. And I think it's being used in a variety of ways. I'll stick to, I guess, the areas that I'm kind of meaningful in the areas that I play in, because it's being used, I guess, across the pharma landscape from R&D onwards, right? So I'll stick to the kind of the commercial space, which touches on what I do. And I think the biggest thing where I've seen it being used at the moment in reality right now is in kind of basically based content creation, and I have seen this already in terms of basically using Gen AI to create images, create copy, etc. as well. Um, I think that's great, and I think so far people have been playing around with it really instead of really being a serious thing. And I think that's great because I think with anything like this, we need to lean into it and play around with it before we can actually figure out okay how best it applies to us. And for me, going back to the earlier conversation we had about shiny things and
Mhm,
keeping it simple and practical, I think there's probably two buckets of areas where I'm seeing it being used and would kind of put energy and focus on it myself where I can do so, which is where can we scale things that we are already doing well or trying to do based on our goals? Um, and on the flip side of that, where can we, I guess, improve areas where we're trying to do things, but actually fundamentally failing? And that's maybe because of a resourcing issue or whatever. So to give examples of that, I think where we're probably attempting to do stuff but failing is around data, our customer data. It all
mhm,
sits in different places. It's very fragmented. To pull that all together, you need lots of people, or maybe sometimes even one person, doing lots of manual stuff, pulling things across, and then generating some sort of insights based on, I guess, their understanding of that data, right? So how can we use AI to pull all of that data to then create some insights about our audience, which can then inform what we do next? I guess very much linked to that, and I think this might be happening in some spaces already. I won't name any names. Is using that data. How can we create, I guess, AI audiences? So AI versions of our target audience based on the data we've ingested, to almost create a safe playing space to experiment. So just to bring that to life a bit more. So if we've got an AI audience which replicates basically our real audience, can we test out content to this AI
mhm,
audience and see how that AI audience, which is the same as our audience, how they would react to this content, which would speed up things as well, because that's a safe space where potentially you could skip the approval process, let's say, because you're not really going out to the public as such, or your HCPs, right? And so, can we use and build those AI audiences to test content? So that's an interesting one that I have discussed with some people about, and I think that could be definitely an area to push energy and time around. And I guess the big thing for me, and we've talked a little bit about it earlier, is copy approval. Because I think with content, lots of content, and using AI to create personalized content to personas and all this stuff means there's a lot more content, which means there's a
Hmm.
lot more things that need to be approved. And so I think if we can solve copy approval with AI, that's a big thing. And I've seen, I don't know the details, but I know Pfizer, for example, they've got something which they published publicly around AI copy approval, which basically I think flags things into like a red, amber, green category.
Hmm.
So if it's red, you probably want a human to take a serious look at it, for example. If it's green, it might just need a once over, for example, that type of thing. So yeah, copy approval is probably the big one to then enable the rest.
So you've got three really good examples: content creation, including images, copy approval, and the other one is like mimicking HCPs to test their reaction to the content. Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So now let's move on from AI and move to you. You started a really fun podcast, Final Form, and I'm just really curious to know what made you decide to start it and how's it going?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting one. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it's actually you touched on it slightly earlier as well, based on what you're doing with this almost as well. And we talked about like kind of formal education for pharma marketeers as well. So for me, I guess it's a combination of things. I've felt it myself, and I've spoken to a lot of people over the years where there's no real kind of space for pharma marketeers to go to learn about pharma marketing. You kind of get thrown into, or you kind of rise up through sales roles into kind of more tactical roles, and then thrown into strategic roles, and maybe you kind of dabble around whatever. There's no space to really learn from peers. Sometimes within even your own company, that people fall down in terms of sharing best practice and learning from each other, but let alone the industry as well. It's not accessible. Um, so for me, it was kind of like those kind of thoughts were first of all stemming around, and then I thought, I see, I don't see enough of some people that I know are doing good stuff out there because they're just not visible online. They're not kind of maybe invited to talks or whatever, or they're just not out there. They're just not online as much. So I wanted to
Mhm.
almost create a platform where I can bring in-house pharma marketeers or medical professionals or other functions, which everyone's working together, and almost give them a stage, shine a light on what they're doing, and really just bring new faces basically to the online world, or however maybe expand that in the future, and really answer a few key questions which I've started with. Which one was around content, for example. Um, One key question I like to find out from people is around job titles, because job titles are so subjective as well. So what actually did that individual see as the purpose behind their role based on whatever job title they're doing? I want them to share kind of specific challenges they're working on and how they're approaching that, their take on the future of the industry, um, how they work on their self development as well, and then tips for new marketers. And I think these are kind of key things that I guess selfishly for me, I would have loved to know like more about as I was kind of coming up through various marketing roles. And so I think if I can kind of bring other people into that space and kind of share all these differences, then again, I to be fair, I've continued learning from it as well, and I'm hoping
Mhm.
other people are learning from it as well. I just wish I could do more of it, to be honest, as well, because it's quite a hefty lift, yeah. But I'm enjoying it, and it feeds my passion to create as well, which is another kind of selfish purpose as to why I'm doing it. So yeah,
Brilliant. I mean, if you've not watched the episodes, please check it out. I think what Amish has done is keeping it real, and it talks into people who are actually doing their job, and they're openly sharing some of their challenges and experiences. So it keeps it practical. I love practical things because we
yeah,
can talk about theory, but if we can't implement the theory, it's just hallucinations. It's people who take action and turn thoughts and theories into real, examples. That's when we experiment and learn from it.
yeah, and that's the
So
key thing why I've specifically chosen individuals that I know are doing things, and I'm sure there's loads of people that are out there doing things. If you are, let me know. But I've specifically chosen people who are practically doing things that can share those things as well. So yeah.
definitely. So I'm just going to ask you kind of futuristic questions. If it was going to be one lasting impact that you could have on pharma industry, what do you think you want your legacy to be?
It's a big, big question. Um,
Mm,
yeah, so it's a big question. To be fair, like you teed me up on this, so I will say thank you as well because actually it's not something I've thought about before, but it's been useful to think about. I think for this, but also just generally because it kind of now shapes what I am now doing going forwards as well. And I think it touches on one of the comments I made earlier as to almost why I left the industry, because I personally, as I mentioned, I felt like I hit a ceiling when I was trying to specialize down the route of staying within marketing versus working on different roles to kind of get that breadth and kind of be an all-rounder type of thing. So I guess the one of the legacies I'd want to live is kind of a generation of, I guess, teams and leaders that make up the people within pharma organizations to have a higher balance of, I guess, marketing and content specialists to retain that in-house skills that we talked about earlier on as well. Um, so when I was thinking about that and kind of like what that practically means again as well is like people that are like demanding visibility and challenging the business of data, not only demanding the visibility of it but direct access to it so they can read it, cut it in whatever ways they want to do that to find out whatever they need to find out, versus just relying on data a function or whatever, or data of one person, for example, to provide something. So that's kind of one thing. I think people in those specialist roles and more of them kind of demanding of themselves and also their agency partners around success being measured on kind of the impact of the stuff they're doing based on the
mhm,
data, not just like, hey, we delivered these things, tick type of thing. So actually focusing on those the impact versus deliverables. And then I think the third thing was around what I mentioned as well, around finding fun in content creation, finding
mhm,
fun in marketing activities. Because I think, yeah, if kind of those three buckets of people and there's a higher balance of them in pharma organizations, will retain that in-house skill. We can use agencies, consultants in a more kind of different capacity. And ultimately, I think that will drive retention of people and also drive better solutions. Yeah. For ultimately what we're trying to achieve as an industry, which is to give better information to HCPs, inspire them to choose the right treatments for their patients to help them live a better life. So yeah.
fantastic. You've got a really clear purpose, and I don't know whether you know this or not. Evidence shows people who have a clear purpose in life live a longer life. So, that's phenomenal. So you're going to live a long life. So can you predict what the farmer is going to be like in 5 years' time?
First of all, thank you. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm looking forward to living that. I think how can I predict industry what farmers going to look like in 5 years' time? It's a tricky one to be honest, because like um, I guess in the general world, yeah, the rate of change is like exponentially growing at pace like no other. But the farm industry as a whole, as we know, doesn't match that rate of change, right? So actually, has it changed a lot in the last 10 years, 25 years, 15 years? Um, it has, I think, but maybe not at the same pace. So in 5 years, let's see. There's some places where I think I'd like it to be, but there's probably some realistic elements to that as well. And I actually dabbled with this thought with a little small focus group earlier in the week as well, just to kind of see what people would say and how they matched kind of what I was thinking. And where I landed was okay. Realistically, I think in 5 years' time, I think maybe even sooner is if we can see kind of at scale that data driven automation of journeys, let's say with kind of efficient ways of working. Because even now, they're kind of one-off things where it requires a lot of work, and so people don't want to do it, and there's still a lot of manual intervention. So can we drive real end-to-end customer journeys through our automation tools, our current automation tools? We don't even need any new ones. We can use Salesforce Marketing Cloud. We can integrate it with all the right data, and then we can have right processes internally to allow people to execute on them. So realistically, I think we can do that, but we're not even there yet. So that's
Mm,
one thing. I think the other thing is teams, I think, and budgets structured around not brands, maybe structured around customer teams or portfolio teams. Because I think some of those teams exist, but maybe they don't have the budget. The budget sits still with the brand team, for example. And so there's almost people trying to do things, but then they're almost constrained because they don't have the money to do it. So can we kind of maybe see an evolution in that space? And I think we can within definitely in the next few years. Um, and then I think AI. I mean, again, everyone's leaning into it now. I think AI will be integrated more into some of those aspects potentially,
Mhm.
but maybe or more aspects as well within the next. Well, I think it definitely will be within the next 5 years. So they're probably the realistic ones, I think, which can happen within the next 5 years, maybe sooner. I
Yeah, I
think
would say amen to that. I think the second one that you talked about, shifting marketing mindset from being brand focused to be customer focused, that needs to have a change management a strategy behind it. It just won't happen automatically. Because as long as people are turning revenue, they don't see the need to change. And I think to make fundamental real engagement with HCPs, we need to really address their pain point. But
mhm.
yeah, I totally agree with you. I think AI is going to change quite a lot in the next 5 years. So yeah, thank you so much. You've been an absolute treasure to have on this. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. And one thing maybe our audience and listeners don't know is um, Amish was one of three people that I shared the manuscript of the Omni Advantage ahead of publication, and the reason is you're such a nice guy. I felt I could trust you that you're going to give me the honest feedback. So if it's like not good or rubbish, you tell me, and if it's good, you tell me. And you were so kind. You read the book cover to cover. And I remember we even had a Teams or Zoom meeting. You asked me some questions to clarify some of the points or challenge me. But you were a great source of support, and I really appreciated your feedback. And as I said, the other thing was you were the first person to post a selfie with the Omni Advantage book, and it was your idea to do the selfie challenge, which has been absolutely great fun. I mean, some of the submissions were mentally crazy, and some of them were using AI were so inspiring and fun. So I was just curious. I know you read the book a while ago. Um, but I heard you mention that you've checked it on Spotify as well, the audio version, right?
I did, yeah. Well, first of all, I wanted to say, well, thank you as well for giving me that early kind of read of it as well. And it wasn't even just, it wasn't going through the motions. Actually, some of the feedback I gave you, almost like you were changing it on the call we were having afterwards, which was kind of mind blowing. It was like a fully edited book, and you were changing it as we were talking almost. So thank you for that. And yeah, I did. I listened to it on Spotify. 'Cause, to be fair, I am more of an audiobook person. So actually, and I did get almost a different perspective from listening to you read it to me
Hmm.
essentially, and then also the voices of the other people that are kind of contributed to the book as well. And I think the main thing for me, which kind of came out again, really, but also emphasized was really just first of all, I loved your personal stories with it, and I think the perspectives from the different people, I think that really brought it to life and kind of gave some kind of flavor to it. The other thing as well, which I'm a keen advocate of, and hopefully that's come through in this conversation as well, is around the people focus. And I think second time around well, the first time I read it, second time that I listened to it, I guess I really found myself really in the shoes of different people. So you really painted that picture really nicely. So it really gave me some things to think about, especially I'm not in those roles now, but I work with a lot of those people, right? So it gave me something to almost use and leverage. And that was the other thing. I think the practical nature of the book, essentially, some of the simple steps that you talk about and some examples that you share. I think I've spoken to other people as well who have really put some things into action, not just read the book and posted a picture, but they put things into action as well. So I think that's the key thing, which shows that what you've created is really great and what was needed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your feedback, and thank you for, giving your feedback before the publication. Because I guess my son always says this. He says, if you ask someone a question and they give you an answer and you don't, change based on the feedback they've given you, then you might as well not ask the question. And I actually found writing the book first time round wasn't that difficult. It took me 6 weeks to write it, but I've edited it 7 times, and in every round of edit, I kind of took feedback, and your round was the last round that we edited. So thank you. I'm grateful for questions you ask and things you suggested I change. Um, I guess one of the key, like my mission about writing the book is because I feel everybody's talking about omni-channel, and you go to conferences, half the topics are about omni-channel. But what we really want is not omni-channel. What we really want is meaningful engagement. And I hope the book, lights gives some clarity in terms of why we are in the situation that we are in terms of reduced engagement with HCPs and what we can do to come out of that situation and be seen as their trusted advisors. And I've been so grateful with the feedback I've received from people who've read it, organically posting about it or sending me private messages. And it doesn't matter whether key account managers work in the field or the leaders in a global organization. If I feel it's helping them to focus on what really matters and is enabling people to use the technology to connect and make meaningful relationships, I feel that that's my job's done, and I'll be really happy to kind of like, um, I guess like put my head down and thinking that I achieved my goal. So I'm really grateful for your feedback. Thank you so much. And I must say, it's been amazing having you here. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure our audience really enjoyed hearing your perspective. Um, I can't help but wonder, did Stephen Bartlett join us? What do you think?
If not,
he's
we'll
not.
send
He's
him
not
the
commented.
recording.
He's not
Yeah,
commented in the chat, has he?
no,
But
maybe we'll send him the recording. But
yeah,
no,
maybe we
honestly,
should.
thank you so much for having me. I wanted to, before we go as well, I wanted to just call out because you won. It was an agency role model award at the Women in Pharma Awards last week.
Yeah, on Friday. Yeah,
So I
that
wanted
made
to
me feel a bit
congratulate you live
emotional.
on air. Yeah.
I've
No,
got the
honestly,
I've
well
got the
done.
trophy here.
Was it?
Shall I flash it? This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I was kind of like quite humbled. I was just so happy to be a finalist, to be with a room with so many other inspiring women, uh, because I just think you can't be a role model on your own. You need to have a village to kind of like create waves and change. So when I won it, I was just like a bit overwhelmed and excited because I guess, I've had opportunities to even be here in this country, to have opportunities that I've had. And I think a lot of people, from a country I come from, women wouldn't have the same opportunities. So I just felt I wanted on behalf of all of them. But thank you for mentioning it. As I said, thank you to our audience. It's been great to have your questions. I think you really changed the dynamics of the conversation because we didn't know what you were going to ask. So you really added to it. Thank you for adding your comments. And I was going to say, I hope you took value from this. And please go and check Amish's podcast because I think it's absolutely awesome. And I would say, one of the things I'm really excited about is because I honestly think we have the power within us as a collective group within the industry to do something so much bigger than ourselves. And I really encourage us to really think about breaking down the silos between medical marketing and commercial, and really focus on the humans within our organization, empowering them, investing in their capability development, and create relevant content that really addresses HCP's pain points and needs, so they have the freedom and the choice to make the best choices for the patients. On that note, I just want to thank you all and then bring this chat to a close. Thank you, Amish.
Thank you, Mehrnaz, and thank you everybody for getting involved and watching.
Yeah. Cheers and see you next month.